it for later.
Yeah, I'll save it for way later. I hope it tasted better than it looked, Hannah.
Yeah, you walked up to my desk and almost first words out of your mouth were, "That doesn't look very good."
Well, it looked interesting. It looked like a mix.
Well, it's got salsa in it, and it's a scramble. So
it looked like a scramble.
It didn't look very appetizing.
Well, Nikki Haley scrambled to the podium yesterday, and everyone thought this is a big announcement. She's losing by about 51-36 in some of the latest polls. Not the case. We'll talk about that. And 2 adults arrested in the KC shooting, so-called air finger quote adults. One in their lower 20s, it says, and another 18 or 19.
And Kyle Rittenhouse even was weighing in on that a little bit.
That's right. And lots going on today. Speaking of law and order, Attorney General Andrew Bailey will be with us ahead of a couple of some arguments in front of the appeals court on our 2A rights. That'll be at 7:35. He also is looking at the Lake City ammo plant, which I really hadn't, I guess it had not been on my radar, but it's one of the few ammunition producing plants that produces both military and civilian ammo. So we'll talk with him at 7:35. And it is time, if you haven't already weighed in on Best of Columbia, the Best of Columbia voting or nomination process is underway. Jordan Durham, the co-editor of Inside Columbia, is with us at 8:10. So we have a busy, busy morning again. And Stephanie, now, I have never seen a shirt with black hearts. Tell us the significance of black hearts. Is it the week after Valentine's Day? What does this
I
mean?
know I missed Valentine's Day last week with this shirt. And I don't hate a black heart. I love the color black.
Okay, it doesn't portend anything.
No, it's just celebrating Valentine's Day. And actually,
you're reading too much into it,
I thought
Doc.
she was maybe mad at us. I wasn't sure.
Actually, my kids' Valentine's Day parties are today. So they have pink hair braided in and stuff. They're really excited because they were supposed to have their party on Friday and it got canceled. So we're celebrating Valentine's Day at my house and in Ashland today.
All right. Well, I'm still excited about. We weren't here yesterday, of course. You and I were off for the day, but I'm still thinking. Yeah, and you guys did great. I heard it as I was driving to my destination. I had to be at.
See,
yesterday.
Hannah, I told you somebody was listening.
I was listening. It's a great show. Great show. Ron Fitzwater was chipper after his great job emceeing the Cole County Lincoln Days the other day.
That was such a fun event.
What's your nickname for him again?
Oh, yeah.
Man, we didn't even get to give him a hard time about that yesterday.
About the parking meters? Yeah, Nazi Ron. Yeah, I know. Call him. Yeah.
Haven't some of the employees at the city been calling him that?
Yeah,
he even came up on stage.
He commented about that.
Because Congressman Luke DeMeyer's wife was talking to him as they were watching one of the meter maids write her a ticket. She's like, gotta go. But and Wake Up Mid-Missouri, I think, got 3 separate shout-outs from the stage.
Yeah, we got name-checked pretty good, didn't we?
It was great. No one said anything too evil about us. It was all generally very, very positive. So we're thankful for that. And it's really a privilege to be able to bring you a lot of the people that make such a difference in our lives. You know, it's true. We talk a lot about national politics, which I think ultimately does filter down and affect us here in mid-Missouri. But, you know, when you're talking about education choice and IP reform and abortion and the issues that really do affect our lives, you know, the trans issue, that was big in the city council the other night. A debate went on for 3 hours. I heard that report from Brian Hauswirth, who joins us now. That was were you there the whole time, Brian Hauswirth?
I was monitoring the whole time on and off, but working on other stuff too. Yeah. We also had a standoff going on at that time, literally at that time. And there were other things as well. But my frustration, and I just, you know, I've seen some of the news reports. I mean, folks, if you're going to report on this or talk about it, at least read the bill, the 4 pages. And you know, I think things are being said. There were things said by both sides at the podium that just aren't in the bill. I linked to it. It frustrates me because I just
a lot of hyperbole. Well, that's politics.
Well, I mean, you know, I know we have opinions on it and stuff, but just read the bill, and then you have a better idea what's in it. It's 4 pages. There's not that much in there, but no, it went 3 hours, and the coffee shop, which is also controversial, the coffee shop near Raising Cane's, they ended up having to table it, not because of that, but that was going to come up next. But imagine the people that have strong feelings in the coffee shop. They would have been lucky if they were lucky to get to that at midnight. That's how long. They didn't adjourn until 11:44 at night. That is a 5-hour meeting. How many people have time to go to that? To sit at a council meeting for 5 hours?
But you can't stream it, though, right? You were streaming.
I was streaming, but I mean, I'm talking about people that want to testify.
That want to test. Oh, I see.
And people were literally lined up to the door to the point where they were worried they were violating the fire code. It shows that the people are interested. There's no doubt. But I'm sure there were others that just didn't have, maybe had to work or couldn't stay up that late.
Brian, you had a good line when you were talking to Gary Nolan yesterday about it. You said, Gary, for basically to look at it, as opposed to an ordinance, it seemed to be more of just a resolution.
It really is, John. I mean, it is, and it's important. It's newsworthy. I still think there could be, we'll see. We're going to have the Attorney General on this morning. I mean, but there were things said on both sides that just aren't in the bill. To everyone's defense, both sides, they were probably thinking the bill that was submitted, because there were submitted bills, but it got changed significantly. So I do encourage people to read it. But for lack of a better term, it is a resolution. They also, guys, passed a roll cart measure that, again, hasn't gotten any. Yeah, and this is going to be in my 6:30
For the
news.
love of Pete.
But here's the thing, folks. I'm not making this up. If you don't store your roll cart correct, no other media's touched this because they were all focused on the other issues, but it came up later, came up close to midnight. If you don't store your roll carts correctly, you could face jail time and a $500 fine. That story coming up at the bottom of the hour.
All
now
right.
that's a news tease right
How much
there.
of a fine?
$500.
For doing what?
Not storing your roll cart correctly.
So, you gotta
Now,
be
again,
kidding me. Well, who
realistic-
defines what is the correct storage of a roll cart?
Your neighbor who calls and tattles on
Yeah,
you.
right.
It's just
And the city that's renting the cart to you.
Yeah.
And it just gets back to what we've talked about before. Local. I mean, literally, you could come out of that meeting, and they are, roll carts we laugh about. The LGBTQ, even though a lot of the people were saying stuff that wasn't in the bill, it's still newsworthy. Coffee shop, that does affect everyone's daily lives. But I'll tell you what, folks, if you got a roll cart, I'd look at the ordinance and make sure, because you never know. I tend to think it's probably not going to. I don't see people going to jail for this, but it's
designed to get people from not leaving them at the curb. I'm sure.
Exactly. And again, it is in the ordinance. Yes.
As I've read through that LGBTQ ordinance, I see a lot of, we won't penalize, nor will we be involved in imposing criminal punishment, civil liability for people seeking gender-affirming health care. Well, if someone comes into the office and says, I want you to do bottom surgery on me or top surgery, and I say no, I'm not going to call the cops, and you have a right to seek whatever you want. I can ask Brian Hauswirth to sign over his house to me, or your car. But why? It seems like over the top, implying that something would happen that. Why would anyone do that in the first place, Brian? What are they fighting against? They're fighting against, it's like a Don Quixote. They're fighting windmills here.
And again, our audience, the listening audience that listens to the show on these stations, because I've seen some of the feedback, is almost the opposite of the opinions expressed at the meeting. There was a lot of support, and the progressives turned out. They were there. They were literally lined up out the door. They stayed till midnight, 5 hour, whatever, however long. The one person told me they stayed in line. Tanya Heath, she had to wait 90 minutes to testify. But it is, for lack of a better term, it is more of a resolution to your points. By the way, a lot of those people said if it didn't pass, they were going to move. Several people said that.
Well, that would have been a shame. Sorry, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I'm glad I said it.
This is one sentence, Randy. I think you were looking at, but again, I linked to it on 939theeagle.com.
Yeah, I'm looking at your link to the actual
bill, and that's what I really hope.
It's great to do that.
I just hope I'm the only reporter in town that's actually linked to the bill.
What a novel thought! Look at
the
at the foundational data.
Yeah, and that way you can see it. But this sentence speaks volumes. Quote: whereas social acceptance and inclusion of LGBTQ people leads to better mental health outcomes and enables those individuals and their families to enrich the cultural and social fabric of the community they live in. End of quote. You know this, Randy, and Counselor Bell's an attorney. That reads more to me as a resolution than it does an ordinance. That is
Well, resolutions usually start out with a series of whereas statements, and I didn't count them. What are there, 10 or what, a dozen?
And they headline it as Declaration of Safe Haven. So it is, they talk about the Pulse nightclub, but this is not. Again, I think the people that were testifying probably were referring, in some cases they had it right, but they were looking to me at the ordinances that were submitted by the Mizzou Democratic Socialists and the gentleman from the Symphony here in town. He spoke as well. There have been a lot of people, but the trans advocates definitely pushed this, and a lot of people called into Gary Nolan yesterday were asking about restrooms. Restrooms are not mentioned in this ordinance whatsoever. I don't see it at all, and it's just not in there.
Well, they do mention the safe haven for LGBT community, whereas the mayor and city council hereby desire to declare the city of Columbia a safe haven for the LGBT community, their families, business establishments, and rights to free speech and expression. So I guess this could be potentially interpreted if someone walked into a bathroom, so-called trans male, or trans female, a male with the parts still there, walked in and into a female bathroom. Potentially, if the police were to somehow, detain this person, Stephanie, would you think that this might be one lever that they would use to say, I've been illegally detained by being a man in a girl's bathroom? And therefore, this is basically telling the police not to enforce whatever law that would be applying to?
I mean, I think we'll hear that argument from the activists.
Yeah.
How that would hold up, I don't know. And the police are going to be really busy, apparently, policing our roll carts and handing out tickets. So how many people they're chasing into bathrooms, I don't know. For me, what is the practical effect of this other than saying, like, Columbia is friendly? It does read more, in my mind, more like a resolution, and I just don't see a lot of practical effect of this. And
didn't the ordinance basically read that it would have a very low level of enforcement, if any, for the police department?
Yeah, it actually, page 3, section 3, if you're looking at it, it does. It says, if unable to be declined for any reason, it will be the lowest priority within the city. And the last point I'd make, John, Stephanie, Hannah, and Randy, is Stephanie brings up a very good point about the roll carts, and I'm being serious. The $500 fine in jail is in the roll cart ordinance if you don't store it correctly. I don't think they're going to do that, but it is in the ordinance. Obviously, they want them stored correctly. But Stephanie's point about resources, as this was going on, literally as this debate was going on, there was a standoff out on Clark Lane at a trailer park out there next to Casey's, and the suspect allegedly pointed a gun at the police. He ended up killing himself. Yeah. A terrible, terrible situation, but they had a lot of police. And my point is, I could hear calls coming in on other stuff on the scanner. I'm not going to get in details, fairly low-level stuff, but they couldn't go. Because they had all their officers out there. Well, so it's going to be a manpower issue as well.
And that's a real question to ask yourself, and something that we've had to ask ourselves at the city of Ashland was specifically
I have no fear of Trump's retribution. I'm not.
Time for the Daily DC Rundown. And she came out with both gloves punching.
Yeah, she said she was going to make an announcement. Everyone got really excited, and she said full steam ahead. But it's not looking good for her. I'm looking at a poll from yesterday showing Trump plus 28 in her home state. And so many people were saying, all right, it's time to just, declare that it's over. And she said, I don't care about my political future. I'm going full steam ahead. And I'm honestly kind of shocked by that.
Or can you calibrate any rational reason that she's doing? Is there something she knows? I heard there was a rich Texas donor. There's some new donors coming in. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean,
Ego,
and then you're right. I think like consultants are very important. We see that even in our state, you get consultants either convincing you to jump in because they're going to get paid or to stay in because they want to get paid. So I don't know what it is, but I just think this is it's not great, and I don't see a path forward. And I think and I think that's what we heard from Joe Manchin last week, and kind of the no labels people is like, if there is no lane, no path forward, then why are we doing this?
Is there a path forward if she is on the on deck circle, and just in case Trump is indicted, in case something happens? I mean, is she just trying to maintain presence?
No, I mean, she's getting trashed. I even listened to like the Morning Wire folks, and they're like, all of her donors are Democrats. I mean, from the people who are on the right, if something happens to Trump, she's not going to be the pick, right? So I think it's not happening for her. And that Republicans are convinced it won't be her. And so I don't think at all, if it's not him, it will be her.
She did have could it be that she has a moderating effect on the Donald? Because last night, his demeanor in that town hall with Laura was a lot calmer and cooler. He was not bad Donald. He was good Donald.
I think
more Biden immoral, unjustifiable, irrational, fiat, capricious student loan forgiveness. And I thought, well, they're just contemplating it, no big deal. And then Stephanie Bell has to go and get me all worked up, telling me it's going to happen. They announced it yesterday.
I wasn't whispering about it, Randy. I was shouting it.
Well, and I know yesterday the word of the day in the state Senate was ballot candy. They're like, you got to get rid of some of this ballot candy off this IP reform. And this isn't really like ballot candy, but it's kind of like election candy because he had announced that he was going to do some of this relief. And, you know, obviously the last relief package got tied up in the courts, and thank God the courts ruled for us.
Him,
yes.
not all of us.
Yes. But he's
Some
announced
of
he's going to do this other relief package, but he was going to start it in July. And I think whoever's pulling the strings in the Biden administration, the Biden campaign, were like, you know, July is a little late. We could lock these voters in now if we just start passing out free money now. So borrowers who own quite, not very much, is what they're saying. These borrowers who only owe, I think, less than $12,000 are going to start getting emails, I believe, as early as tonight, saying that they're going to. But the total cost of this package is $1.2 billion. So don't let them fool you that it's like, oh, it's just people who don't owe very much. You know, when you aggregate that up, it's a big expense to you, Randy, to me, who's already paid my student loans.
Well, I paid my loans. My wife paid her loans. We paid our children's education. We work 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to do that. Well, I want reparations.
Can I just say...
I want reparations.
Pay your loans, Hannah.
Can I just say, before I start getting hate mail again, okay?
You don't qualify.
Well, I don't think I qualify, no. But also, anyone who was offered student loan forgiveness that was in their right mind would take it.
For sure.
So before you come calling me spineless and a piece of you-know-what, all things that have happened on this topic, put yourself in my shoes, and if you're being told that your student loans are going to be forgiven, it's okay to be a little excited about that.
Yeah. Tell me if you cashed the check that they mailed during COVID or if you took PPP money, because a lot of Republicans did. So if you're giving Hannah hate, if the government's handing out free money, you're just stupid for not taking it.
I got none of that, by the way.
I don't blame you.
Same.
I don't blame you for that. But I do. Well, you may have indirectly gotten some of that. I mean, if the company got some, then that may have sustained employability or, management decisions. So indirectly, I think a lot of people did benefit from that program, which was terribly administered, rolled out too quickly, absolutely irrational, and in the end, not needed.
And wrought with fraud. I mean, we're finding out there's been people prosecuted, I think here in Missouri, who used it for yachts and not hookers, but, not the things that it was meant to be spent on. But now, yeah. And I think more broadly, I think the problem for me too is what incentives are we, giving to young people when they keep hearing, oh, the government's going to forgive your loans. If you're headed to college and you're thinking, well, I wasn't going to head to college because I didn't know how to pay for it, but I keep thinking, or I keep hearing that, you can just take out these loans and, Joe Biden will just take care of you. I think it's incentivizing people to go to college who probably shouldn't. It's also incentivizing people to take out loans when maybe they should have, found a way to work. And I think that's a really bad incentive to get people into.
Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, think this through. Think this through. I am reading off of the ed.gov website. This is right off of their press release. An unparalleled track record of student debt cancellation. $56 billion for more than 793,000 borrowers through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. $46 billion for 930,000 through the improvements to income-driven repayment. $12 billion for 513,000 borrowers with total and permanent disability. $22.5 billion for 1.3 borrowers through closed school discharges, borrow defense, related court settlements. And now this will be $153,000 getting a handout. Now, is this something we have come to a point? We're all socialists now. Would you play the socialist national? Play the da 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 da. The Russian national. We're there. We're there. For the bumbler word salad administration, that would be the Biden-Harris administration, To be proud of this? To be proud of giving other people
upsets me about them giving away my money. I worked hard. I've been in the trades. I'm an electrician. I worked for companies that had tuition reimbursement, and I went to school through that. And I'm at retirement age, and I don't have a penny in student loans. Never had. Maybe it's time for me to go out and buy a new Harley for my retirement and let them pay for that.
Right. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it. A lot of people that didn't go to school and gutted out a living, sometimes working one or two jobs, maybe starting their own small company and putting a second mortgage on the house. And look, again, Hannah, if it's there, you should take it. Absolutely. I get it. But there's more to this. They use the word hardworking Americans. They imply that everyone is hardworking. No one has multiple subscriptions to the NBA channel, the NFL channel, Hulu, Disney Plus, Paramount. I want some accountability. Where is the accountability? Where is the means testing for this?
It's worse than that. And I mean, anecdotally, I can tell you, going to law school, I have a lot of friends with a lot of loans, right? And this program is slightly different than the one that he proposed before. And I don't think I have a problem. If you are actually working and suffering a hardship, there are already programs in existence to help you through that with your loans. But I personally, in my life, know people who have visited 10 plus countries, who drive a luxury vehicle and who still had student loans sitting out there just because they chose to make other financial decisions. Yeah. And those would have been wiped away by that first program. Right. And so it's ridiculous.
Now, one debate you don't hear that much about is, what about the private lenders, Sallie Mae and the Citizens Bank and SoFi and all those that are offering their private loans and all. How does that factor in? If you start forgiving loans, you're going to tell these guys that, well, you can't collect your loans off these people on the private market either.
There's just I think if someone who is destitute is getting a loan forgiveness, someone who's gone up to 100 countries and owns 5 yachts should get their loans forgiven. I'm sorry, we're all equal here. Everyone's equal under the law. I disagree with this. See, that's where you and I disagree. I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. You pay the piper. You put your ink on the and you said a very critical thing. There's already mechanisms if you have a hardship to stretch out the loan to do whatever. Okay.
Yeah, and there's forgiveness, and I don't think fundamentally I have a problem for the forgiveness for people who go into public service. And so I know amongst my classmates there was some sort of thing that as long as you worked and as long as you paid a certain amount, I think over 10 years, that at the very end, that as long as you stayed in government, that they would forgive a certain amount.
Why?
Because you could have gone into the private sector, but you're choosing to serve in government
But you
instead.
go to government, you get...
That's still a thing.
How many holiday days now? 20, 30? How many holiday days do they get off?
45, I don't know.
And beautiful, lavish health care plans and great pensions? I don't feel sorry for them, no.
I don't feel sorry for them. I just don't object to that program.
No, because that incentivizes more government. No, we need to In fact, it should be no one should want to work for the government unless in a very essential role.
And that was
part of creating too much government here. Too many government people.
And that was part of the problem is that usually no one does want to work for the government. So I know specifically I had some really smart, really talented classmates who year 6 through 10 would have jumped from their government jobs. And I'm really glad they ended up in leadership positions in the government because it helped the state retain those really talented folks because they knew if I just stick it out 4 more years, I'm going to get some loan
to administer the child care tax credit program and the Medicaid program and the unnecessary Board of Healing Arts and the unnecessary Board of Licensing Hairdressers. Come on. We got too much government. Too much government. Let's not defend more and bigger and more government. We just expanded the budget by how many $1 billion, John Marsh? 20, $30 billion? I mean, come on.
Well, the question that comes up from time to time, is it cycles back to college and tuition costs and people of modest means back in the day, back in our day, if you worked full time and went to college, you could probably, do it without a loan to some of the lower priced institutions. But now with the price of tuition, a lot of folks who don't have rich parents are pretty much shopped out of the market and have no choice but to take student loans.
Well, and when you're applying for things like the FAFSA or other loans, they ask a lot of questions about your parents' income. And they base your FAFSA scholarship amounts, essentially, off of your parents' income, which, my family helped out a lot with my education. And, the loans that I have could have been much, much worse. But for folks who aren't in that situation, who are paying entirely for their schooling, it's not fair that the FAFSA looks at their parents' income to determine how much aid they get while in school.
The reason education costs what it does, the reason higher education, the reason healthcare costs what it does, the reason everything that the government subsidizes costs what it does is because the government does, and the people who are administering and setting the prices knows that the money is easy. That's the problem. We have a fundamental root cause problem. The government has no business, zero, nada, none, handing out money to institutions for people to go to school with their name on a thing, which they can later forgive.
But the money isn't easy for people like me who have 3 kids, right, who are going to go to college. And, I would say I've tried to do the responsible thing. I went, and did my 520 and the 527 plan with the government to try to, save every month. I've been putting away money since they were born.
Okay.
And I don't think we're even going to have 1 year's worth of savings to be able to afford 1 year, even saving every single month, never missing a month. And I looked at the Mizzou website just now. They said the total estimated build cost for the 2023-24 academic year, $27,000 to $31,000 a year for a state institution.
Well, that's because we need all of that fancy infrastructure over there at the ballpark village over there, don't you know? I mean, we need all that. That's really important.
I really do like the
we need to make sure and make the tuition really high so we
need
can
to make
cover
sure
all that.
Hannah can go to her classes wine class. And what was that other class you mentioned the other day? It wasn't underwater basket weaving, but it was real close.
Oh, my floral design classes?
Floral design, yes.
We seem to have a difference of opinion here, and I think I know at least what may be a little bit at the root of it with a new study about men and women's brains. We'll talk about that when we come back on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Everyone take a deep breath, including me.
You need to read Jamie's text.
We'll be back. Everything's fine. It's all good.
I don't know if I would say everything's fine.
That would be fun. We should put like one of those auto cuffs on you one day and just watch it. Watch the numbers.
Yeah. Well, someone's got to say it because I know what everyone's thinking. Now, I have to say I had a nice interaction with someone from the Medicaid office in Missouri here yesterday. I had a question about whether I, as a non-billing, I don't bill any insurance company for my services. Medicare, Medicaid, I don't bill them. But I want to have patients who have those to use their insurance if they want to use their insurance. So I had a question. Can I do that? Will they recognize my order? Because I'm not one of their hired hands. I'm not one of their serfs. By the way, all of your providers who work for insurance companies, in a way, they're sort of serfs. They're paid.
I got out of that system a long time ago.
It's the worst thing ever. It is just awful. If you can avoid being involved with insurance companies, minimize your involvement, please consider that. We'll do a show on that sometime or a segment or two on that. Okay, so we talked about men, and I perceive maybe some gender differences during our discussions now and then. I mean,
no,
I perceive, for instance, in our past discussion about student loan forgiveness, John, did you perceive that there was a different analysis coming from Stephanie because if you've worked hard and you've paid your loans and you have a hardship and sort of that empathetic sort of understanding kind of there's a difference in the way we analyze things, right?
Oh, well, for sure. I mean, if you've taken on student loans and been diligent in paying them off, pat on the back to you. That's how the system's designed. And then you get the administration making promises that they don't follow up on and raise people's hopes.
There's a study of brains of men and women and how they operate differently for the first time in Breakthrough that shows that sex does matter in how people think and behave.
No.
So, yeah, well, men are for Mars and women are for Venus, Never really been any definitive proof, but Stanford University researchers have shown it's possible to tell the sexes apart based on activity in hotspot areas. Hannah, we're talking about the brain here.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I saw the smile. They include the default mode network, an area of the brain thought to be the neurological center for self, important in introspection and retrieving personal memories. The limbic system is also implicated. Mine gets active now and then. It helps regulate emotion, memory. It deals with sexual stimulation.
Oh,
now
we don't need to know about that.
Dr. Vinod Menon, professor of psychiatry, said, very strong piece of evidence, sex is a robust determinant of human brain organization. Now, so marked differences in how women tend to be better at reading comprehension and writing ability on average. So witness Stephanie Bell, counselor at large, and our general counsel here on the program. You're not our official counsel, though.
Absolutely not.
She's probably very glad for that, too.
Yet, scientists have struggled to spot it. Now, men seem to have stronger visual and spatial awareness and better working memory. Now, this is true. When we're out even at home, if we're anywhere, I'm constantly scanning. And I can tell you if there's a deer against the forest on a field 20 acres away as we're driving down the highway. And my wife is worried about whether, Shannon's daughter brought her Valentine's to the party. It's a different, right? And
we know that you're constantly scanning, and I wouldn't have said that you were scanning for a deer. But yes,
scanning.
Men are visual.
What do you think we're a really riveting statement there. This was about her husband who's been deployed overseas, and I think that sounded like a very genuine moment. If you watch the video on it, I think she really did get choked up. People are in harm's ways over there. We recently had, of course, several, service members killed. Did you think that was contrived to try to propel her failing candidacy, Stephanie Bell?
No, I think it sounds
genuine.
Sincere. I think I'm struggling with her because I do like her in some ways. I like some of her policy positions. I have a lot of respect for her. But like one of my biggest things with people is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And so, her announcing yesterday that she's going to continue to push forward where it doesn't appear that there's any path. It is either, ego, which I also have a problem with, or, complete lack of self-awareness in some sort of like fantasy. She's living in some sort of fantasy land, which I also don't like.
We're also following other stories, both nationally and internationally. Donald Trump's town hall last night, pretty powerful. His demeanor was subdued compared to usual Donald. And commentators afterwards were saying, wow, that was a different Donald. And I think a Donald that's likely to garner more independent voters and maybe voters that swung Donald in 16 and swung Biden in 20, perhaps, And then the two so-called adults arrested in Kansas City, one it said 18 or 19, the other one in their early 20s. It's interesting they don't pinpoint, at least in the AP story. And one of those shooters were whose gun, that bullet killed the Hispanic broadcaster, Lisa Galvin Lopez.
Right, and the one of them was out on like bond or something, and had just had a gun crime recently, and had been released. And people were bringing that up yesterday, like, whoa, this guy, isn't the, it's not his first rodeo, which tends to be the.
And it appears as though this did really start with a dispute among, two or more people that then escalated into this shooting incident and people running through the crowd, shooting guns wildly. I imagine, I guess you have to ask the question, was this targeted injuries of these other people? Probably not from the way it sounds. It sounds like they were shooting at one another, running, and other people were getting caught.
A lot of other people. So Lyndall Mays, one of the men that was charged, got off unsupervised probation earlier this month for pulling out a gun at the Belton Community Center in 2021.
Did you say unsupervised probation?
He was originally on unsupervised probation, but that had ended recently. For another, gun incident, and less than a month off of probation, and here we are again. I mean, how many people? It was more than 20 people that were, and mostly children that were injured.
Yeah. And don't forget, we've got the two juveniles that are still charged and being at least held on gun and resisting arrest charges.
Right. We're going to be talking with Andrew Bailey about that issue, about the juvenile justice system, and at what point does a crime committed by a juvenile, ascend to the level that it has to be treated differently. It's a difficult decision. I understand that. Juveniles still have very developing brains, but it seems like kids these days in general, I know my kids.
Oh.
Kids these days.
You didn't.
I mean, I just got called an 80-year-old by an 80-year-old for using underwater basket weaving.
No, and I'll go back to kids those days in the 90s when technology started really coming to the fore. We noticed that the difference between the maturation and sort of the street wiseness, street wisdom of our third child, who was born in 94, as opposed to the ones that were born in 87 and 8 and 90, vast difference, because with the onset of even then infant technology, things changed, and it just, kids are learning things that they probably can't handle, and they're being, I guess, infiltrated with knowledge of things that are just they can't handle yet. And I think social media has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, not all of it's bad. I got into, in the car last night, my son was explaining the difference between the placebo effect and the Mandela effect to my other child. And I'm like, where do you?
Seriously?
Yeah, and I had to look it up. I actually Googled. I was like, is he right? I'm ready to correct him if he's wrong. He was right. But so in one way, they do have, information. I think a lot of people, so I think, Randy, your argument is that, these kids are growing up on the streets, a little bit more quickly. So even if they were 17 or 18, they should be charged as juveniles. But I would say, off of the street in regular life, I would say kids are much more immature. They aren't prepared, and so I'm looking at kids, who are still living at kids, I say kids, people in their 20s who are still living at home, who aren't responsible for their own bills, who are, my husband has a story of, counseling someone and they needed to, this person didn't know how to pay a bill because they were like, where do I put this in the mail? Like, what do an adult, right? So, so I think in one way, yes, kids are getting a lot of information in the same way. I think they are wholly unprepared and much less mature well into their 20s.
Is that a lapse maybe earlier in their life? I mean, are we not teaching them basics of arithmetic? How do you do long-form division? How do you do, and people will say, well, I don't need to, I got a calculator. The evidence is clear on that. I looked into that with the neurodevelopmental science a few years ago. There's something that happens in the brain there's connections and there's pruning of neurons that happens all throughout adolescence and even before, that just doing mathematical calculations, and I'm using that as an example, has something to do, And I think the easier that technology makes it to avoid doing those brain operations, I'm not sure that's so good for us in the final analysis.
Yeah, I'm not a brain expert on children. I do remember early on having the parents as teachers folks come over to my house, and they said, is Drew jumping off of stuff? And, he was like 1.5, 2. And I was like, well, generally we encourage him not to jump off of stuff. And she said there's something that happens in the brain in that moment that you like catch air and that before you hit the ground that does something. And she's like, so what you need to do is you need to like make a little step, and then we need to practice jumping because it does something to their brain. And I thought, I'm an educated person, and I have no idea. So, do I agree that every kid needs to learn long division? I don't know about that, but I do think we get back to practical education, whether that be in tech or ag or other things. Teaching kids practical skills for life, I think, is really important and setting them up for success. And would I rather my kid know long division, or would I rather them learn how to smoke meats like the FFA smoked meats competition? For sure, the latter. And so I think that's on all of us to make sure that our school curriculum is focusing on the basics and also life skills. Yeah. One of the things I really appreciate about Southern Boone is they do the learning garden. I never learned to garden as a child, and my kids are already way ahead of me on that. And I think being able to self-produce and provide for yourself and having some responsibility over your own food is one way to prevent food insecurity. So I think the more we can focus on stuff like that, the better we are.
Well, perhaps the answer is then to just trim the technology and what it is feeding them, right? Because somewhere these kids are I don't know, where are these kids getting permission? Where does a juvenile get a permission? And it's widespread, especially in urban environments, but we've seen it in Columbia. We've seen it occasionally in Jefferson City, where we see young people, and they may be in their 20s then, but sometimes juveniles, that just think that because you and I have a dispute, it's time to pull out a gun. Where is that coming from? Is it coming from Grand City Auto? What's the name of I don't know, the video games they play.
Are you talking about Grand Theft Auto?
Grand Theft or City Auto Theft? I don't know. I don't do that stuff. I don't play those games, but that's okay. That's just me. But, there's an exposure to a life that is unacceptable, and it's happening too early. And it's because I think we're consumers of all this incoming TV, drama, movies, social media, TikTok, whatever. The video games, the violent video games, I mean, is that an association or a cause of the increase in street violence, or one of the contributing causes?
Now, there are some studies that show that playing violent video games actually gives kids an outlet to express any aggression that they might have so that they don't do it IRL.
Okay. I need help here because my child asked me this week, all my friends play Fortnite and I want to know. And I said, I have to do my research. I don't know. So if you have an opinion, I want to know, because I said, we're going to press pause on that and I've got to look that up. But no, whether or not it's video games, I don't really think it's video games, but I do think one thing, I think it's, what you see in your life. Like, I think it's the examples you see, some of that. And if you see a lawlessness and you see folks committing crimes and not getting prosecuted, and you think you can get away with it and you can solve it outside of the justice system, so like what they see in St. Louis, if they've got, family members or uncles or friends or whatever in their life, and they see they get to do whatever they want and they get,
it goes unprosecuted. Then
you, that's a learned, that's a learned
So
behavior.
what you're saying is, examples are important. Modeling is important. Just like if you learn that you can take out a loan and get it politically forgiven, then that may happen again. Right, Hannah?
I mean, I don't plan on getting more student loans.
No, but
again,
not you, but maybe your son or daughter, right? Or maybe your niece or nephew. You see what I mean? Examples matter and precedent matters.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete, we used to talk about personal responsibility. And now I don't, if I go shoot someone, I don't have to take responsibility for that all the time because we don't have the structures in place to make sure that that person gets brought to justice. If I take out a loan and I make that choice for myself, I no longer have to have the personal responsibility to pay that back and to do what I said I was going to do. We said, I make personal choices about lots of different things if I'm a Democrat, and I think I should not have to take personal responsibility for my choices, whether it be, about my body, about my student loans, about my whatever. And we've just completely lost that personal responsibility aspect.
Well, and to take that one step further, people not taking accountability for things that they post online, too.
Yeah.
We saw a prime example of that this week, or late last week, whichever.
Oh my, yes.
With some of our state officials.
Republican colleagues.
Yeah. And the lack of accountability is a little concerning.
You're so right.
What about the whole family and economic situations that we see so many times? With juveniles being involved. Poverty and single family homes and all that, and then they cycle back to the exposure to violence on TV and the media, too.
Well, which is why I'm going to vote for the candidate that wants more, disincentivizing motherhood and paying for people to have more babies. I'm going to vote for that candidate because that's really good. It's already a struggle to raise kids. And I think we should be very careful about how we, incentivize or disincentivize. I'm going to use the word proper parenting. We know what improper parenting is. It's like obscenity. You know it. You don't have to define it. You know what it looks like. All right, when we come back, it's time for What's Hot with Hannah. I want to give her enough time because yesterday she had Yes, ma'am.
But in the months leading up to me getting hitched back in October, I did a lot of wedding-related What's Hot with Hannah stories.
A lot.
It was my whole personality.
I heard.
Essentially, yeah.
You're allowed that.
Yeah, and I am probably not allowed that anymore, but I don't care. We're going back. And I found a wedding-related story that was just plain weird. And I think I covered some stories that involved, couples getting engaged at weird restaurants and things of the sort. But this is maybe the weirdest place I've seen an actual wedding take place.
Buc-ee's.
It is not
What?
Buc-ee's. I think that would almost be better. An Ohio couple hosted their wedding ceremony in a Kentucky gas station. Specifically, they said their vows inside the bathroom
Ew.
at this gas station.
Oh, yeah.
I guess the gas station had gone viral for their, quote, disco bathroom. And there's a red button in there. And when you hit the button, the lights kick off and there's like disco lights that come on for a few seconds. And they went viral for that. And an Ohio couple said, that's where we want to get married.
There you go.
My God.
Spanish hustle right down the aisle.
Yeah, the bride walks down the aisle right along the slushy machines and rounds the corner, and there's her groom. There's a beautiful balloon arch. There's fresh flowers everywhere. And they actually say their vows in the bathroom. The door was open so that their guests could...
So they didn't have to ask the attendant for the key on the long plastic fob.
I guess not. But they went straight from their first kiss as husband and wife into their first dance in the bathroom.
Oh, gross.
Am I the only one that has the knack for really, really having to go and stopping at the gas station and the only bathroom, it's a one-holer and it's already in use? And it's in use for like 10 minutes?
Well,
Does that only happen to me?
Randy,
No.
I wish I had $1 for every time I hear you say, I got to go scratch the sandbox in a day.
I have kids too, so I'm like on a limited time frame. So
Yeah.
if we show up and there's a line, we're like back in the car somewhere else, right?
I feel sorry for women in most venues because, like, we were at the Fox last weekend, and the line went from the women's bathroom all the way almost out to the street on the west side of the north side of the theater.
It's so annoying.
I know, and the guys are like in and out. I just feel so. But I think a lot like new stadiums are built with different ratios, aren't they?
They've gotten better, and lucky for
It
me,
depends on what you identify as for how long you're going to stand in line at the bathroom.
I have definitely gone in a men's restroom
That's what I was just
before
getting ready to
because
say.
I have no problem with that. But also, I hang out with men mainly, conferences, Republican stuff, utilities, elections. So
okay.
usually I get pretty lucky in that the women's line is shorter. But it's a problem.
I know even here in the building, there's very few women here like in the mornings. And so no line ever.
Now, Hannah, with your favorite, what is the big gas? Is it Buc-ee's? It's like a Walmart? Or,
I still have never been to
Ooh,
one.
I've been. They're
but
awesome.
I really want to.
could you see getting married in such a warm weekend. Things are heating up in Attorney General Andrew Bailey's office. Well, they're always hot there, but it's really getting warm with lots of stuff happening. Welcome to Wake Up Mid-Missouri, Andrew Bailey.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. Always appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all.
General Bailey, I know you have a big argument coming up on Friday. You eating your Wheaties, getting all pumped for that? Tell us about it.
Hey, we're getting fired up. Look, this is in defense of Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act. It's been challenged by the Department of Justice. Look, Biden's Department of Justice hates the Second Amendment so much that when the state of Missouri asserted a right under the Constitution that's protected by both the federal Constitution and the state Constitution, that Biden's Department of Justice decided to sue the state of Missouri. We are the named defendant in a lawsuit brought by Biden's Department of Justice, and we're going to vigorously defend this statute that was passed by our people's elected representatives in the General Assembly and signed into law by our governor. And what it does is it says that we're not going to use state resources to enforce unconstitutional federal rules and laws. That's all it says. It's really an assertion of our Second Amendment and our 10th Amendment right. As you'll recall, the 10th Amendment says any authority not given to the federal government or denied to the states is enjoyed by the states and the people of the states. This legislation is merely an assertion of both the Second and 10th Amendment. We're going to defend it on Friday at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and I'm excited to see where this goes. I mean, I think we're confident in our ultimate success on the merits, and we're never going to stop defending our Second Amendment rights.
There has been a lot of controversy, General Bailey, about, well, not a lot, but you hear local law enforcement officials being interviewed on sometimes national outlets and sometimes statewide, local, about how that may interfere, theoretically, with their ability to, the Second Amendment Protection Act may interfere with their ability to enforce local crimes because they need the cooperation of the feds. What do you say in response to that?
Well, the law doesn't prevent them from cooperating with the feds. If the feds want to come in and do an investigation and hand it off to local law enforcement or local prosecutors, this law doesn't prevent them from doing that at all. All it says is that the federal government can't commandeer the apparatus of state government to accomplish unconstitutional objectives. What could possibly be objectionable about that?
General Bailey, we appreciate you joining us live, and I know you got a lot of things on your plate, obviously the border and fentanyl, other things. I want to get your take on the ordinance, and for lack of a better term, ordinance resolution that was approved here in Columbia on Monday evening involving the LGBTQ community. I've linked to it, folks. I encourage you to read it. I linked to the actual bill. You can see it for yourself, KWS.com, 93nowntheeagle.com, and I'm going to read one sentence to you, General Bailey, because I think this is perhaps the key to it. It says this, and this is straight out of the bill: except as otherwise required by law, the enforcement of any state or federal law or the laws of any other jurisdiction which seek the prosecution or imposition of administrative penalties, criminal punishment, civil liability, administrative penalties, or professional sanctions against an individual or organization for providing, seeking, receiving, or assisting another individual who is seeking or receiving gender-affirming health care within the city will be declined, and, comma, if unable to be declined for any reason, comma, will be the lowest priority within the city, end of quote, straight out of the ordinance. General Bailey, your response to the bill, and will you file a lawsuit against the city? You suggested the last time you were on you were considering that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're going to go after local officials who refuse to abide by the laws of the state of Missouri. We proved that in St. Louis when we took out Kim Gardner with the lawsuit that removed her for refusing to enforce state law. And if that case taught us anything, it's that we have the authority at the state level to remove local officials who are refusing to carry out state law. The political subdivisions of the state are beholden to state law. They don't have to like it, but their remedy is in the General Assembly. Elect different representatives and get different laws passed. But what you can't do is nullify law at the local level. Again, we've seen that fail miserably in the city of St. Louis, and people suffered for it, and ultimately we had to file the lawsuit. So, look, the local governments are not going to be allowed to deprioritize enforcement of state law, and if they do, we'll find methods at the state to come in and enforce it for them.
Yeah, I mean, this does really put potentially some healthcare providers on, in an interesting position, right? Because there are interested people in this community who would like to provide that kind of care, top surgery, bottom surgery, whatever. But it sounds like if you read this and if it were to be enforced, there wouldn't be a problem, even though it would be against state law for them to provide that. Columbia wants it to be another way, General Bailey. That sounds odd to me.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely illegal. And again, we have mechanisms, we have authority at the state level to come in and enforce the law if the locals are refusing to do it, and we will not hesitate to do that. But let me make two other points that I think are broader points that need to be made here. Number one, under Senate Bill 49 that outlawed this kind of gender mutilation of children, which that's what we're talking about. What the city of Columbia says is it's okay to mutilate children. And we're not going to stop anybody from mutilating children. That's what that ordinance says. But let's think about this more broadly. Senate Bill 49 provides a private cause of action for medical malpractice with a 15-year statute of limitations. So any child who is mutilated that then goes to adulthood and realizes, oh, my gosh, I can't enjoy the full spectrum of adulthood because I was harmed because the adults in the room failed to protect me, can bring a lawsuit. So how many of these Columbia city leaders are willing to waive their sovereign immunity, and be subject to civil penalties, because that's what they're telling us. But also, I want to point out, this ordinance also violates people's religious freedoms. And I think there's at least one person that spoke out at the hearing on the ordinance and said, look, you're violating our right of religious expression. And if you're saying that we can't speak out against this kind of gender mutilation because it goes against our core religious beliefs protected by the First Amendment.
Yeah, just a very quick follow-up. There was a one of our listeners who testified. Her name is Bonnie. She is a grandmother, General Bailey, and she did tell, well, first of all, she told Councilman Lovelady wasn't representing her, but she said this does go against her religious belief. So I believe that's who you're referring to. There may have been others as well. I definitely heard her, a grandmother here in town.
I haven't seen anything in here, at least at my reading, that would infringe on a person's right to free speech against gender-affirming health care. So I don't think there's any First Amendment infringements implied here, are there?
Well, there could be. And I think there's a decision that came out of the United States Supreme Court yesterday that said when you start making these kinds of classifications and saying that you can't deny that basically certain classifications get certain rights, and those rights conflict with people's core religious beliefs, you can run afoul of the right to free expression of religion under the First Amendment. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, look, if the bill forces people to accept ideology that conflicts with their religious beliefs, that can be violative of the First Amendment right to free expression of religion. And I would point out that, again, when we're talking about the state being able to enforce state law, even where locals are failing to do it, the Missouri Human Rights Act says that you can't discriminate against people based on religion. And the Attorney General has enforcement authority under that. So when I'm saying that the state has authority to come in and enforce laws when it needs to, that's an example of what I'm talking about.
Missouri's Attorney General Andrew Bailey joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
General, as long as we're on First Amendment issues, where is your office at with Missouri versus Biden? We understand supposed to go before our high court, next month with your arguments?
It does, yeah. We'll be at the United States Supreme Court on March 18th. I'll be there. We'll be representing the state of Missouri in that case. You know, this is a monumental case where we've uncovered government censorship of free speech on big tech social media platforms. And surprise, surprise, the only speech that was being censored by the federal government was conservative speech. That clearly is viewpoint discrimination and violation of the First Amendment right to free speech. Our lawsuit has been successful thus far. We've got to build a wall of separation between tech and state. The first brick of that wall was laid on July 4th when we obtained a nationwide injunction against this kind of government censorship. We defended it twice at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The score is Missouri 3, Biden 0 in the fight for free speech. And we're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to bring home a win next month on March 18th.
I sure hope you're right. Well, let's give us the latest on this Lake City ammo.
Yeah, look, this is something. This should be a point of pride for all Missourians. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on here, but let me point out, 90% of the ammunition that is given to our United States military to fight for our freedom is produced here in Missouri, in Independence, Missouri, at the Lake City ammo plant. That is cool. I mean, we should be celebrating that as an act of patriotism. But the government contracts with Winchester Ammunition to run the plant. So it's a government-owned plant, but they contract with a private company to run the plant. And in exchange for making bullets for the Army, Winchester gets to make different bullets for the civilian market. And so blue state attorneys general have urged President Biden to get the Army to breach the contract and force Winchester out of the civilian market. Well, that's a market manipulation designed to attack our Second Amendment rights. What the left has failed to do in court, in other words, the left has failed to eliminate our individual right to keep and bear arms. If the Supreme Court has properly interpreted the Second Amendment as protecting that right, the left is now opening a new front in the war on the Second Amendment by trying to manipulate the marketplace to drive up ammunition prices so that common folks like you and me won't be able to enjoy our Second Amendment rights. The right doesn't mean anything if we can't afford the bullets. And by the blue state attorneys general attacking Winchester, what they're trying to do is force a legitimate company that employs thousands of people here in Missouri and provides needed job opportunities in Independence, Missouri, out of the marketplace in an attack on our Second Amendment. We're not going to let it happen. I led a coalition of 28 other attorneys general to fight back, and we're going to continue to protect Missouri workers and our Second Amendment rights.
Whether it's student loan debt forgiveness or whether it's the ammo end around on Second Amendment rights, it's funny how this Biden administration knows no limits, Attorney General. Talking about guns, the poor dead woman's body wasn't even cold, and out came the gun confiscation lobby. It was so sad after the shooting there in Kansas City the other day. I mean, is there no decency among these people that want to take away the guns of law-abiding citizens? Now we see that 2 juveniles' names and identities are still being protected. Where do juveniles' rights end and adult responsibility begin? That's question number 1. Number 2, 2 adults arrested yesterday or charged yesterday. Your thoughts on that shooting, the response, and what's wrong with our law and order system that leads to events like this?
Well, it is absolutely shameful that the anti-gunners, the gun grabbers, prey on the victims of these tragic homicides and uses it as an opportunity to attack our constitutional rights. I would point out that criminals don't obey laws. There is no law you would have passed that will stop criminals from suddenly deciding, okay, well, I'm not gonna commit crimes anymore. And so all we've learned is that those kinds of laws hurt law-abiding citizens, not the criminals. And where is the breakdown in the detection and enforcement of these criminals before it happens? In other words, you've got juveniles running around armed, willing to engage in gunfire at a parade. Where was the juvenile officer? Why weren't these kids already under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court? They're clearly beyond parental control, and our judicial system our statutes provide that juveniles who are beyond parental control come under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court. So where was the system failure? You're there. What we see time and time again, and you're right, it's from the border to crime and firearms issues. But what we see is that the left doesn't enforce the laws on the books, then blames the guns or blames the ammunition or blames everybody else and demands new laws and tries to hold the rest of us hostage to achieve a radical left-wing agenda. And we can't let it happen here in Missouri.
No, it's got to stop. And I think a lot of us are really getting tired of our guns that we love to use for self-defense, for target practice, for hunting, whatever, increasingly threatened. Is there a possibility that what happened in Wisconsin, where the woman was convicted, the parent of the child who shot up that Wisconsin school, was held responsible essentially for her son's behavior by giving him a gun? Is that something we could see in Missouri at some point?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, look, it is a criminal offense to violate an order of the juvenile court, but it requires that the system function properly on the front end. And so, were these kids under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court? What kind of criminal history do they have in their background? Were they beyond parental control? And had the court issued any orders to the parents? Those are all questions that we would need to know. But look, there's not any transparency or accountability in our juvenile system right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the system failures. I know there are bills moving in the General Assembly to reform our juvenile justice system. I think that's appropriate. I think that that is an area of law that has gone neglected for far too long, and it's always time to take a look under the hood, see what's not working, and try to fix it. And I think this demonstrates the immediate need for that.
All right. Attorney General Andrew Bailey, we always appreciate your time. We know you're busy in getting preparation for the appeals court argument against the SAPA suit.
Doesn't like a little braised pork with their coffee in the morning. Starbucks betting on that combo with a new drink being released in China to mark the Lunar New Year, dubbed as the Abundant Year Savory Latte. The drink combines Dongpo braised pork flavor sauce with espresso and steamed milk, with extra pork sauce and a skewer of pork meat for garnish. Priced at 68 yuan, about $10. Eating meat means prosperity in the coming year, the Lunar New Year. Starbucks also releasing some other new flavors across China, including a jujube macchiato inspired by New Year's rice cakes, an almond tofu macchiato, and a soy sauce Szechuan peppercorn frappuccino. So you can mark the year of the wood dragon and say Gongxi Fasai. Now you know the rest of that.
Man, they're making a meal out of their morning coffee over there.
My frou-frou coffee drinks, they're supposed to be sweet. I think they're doing it wrong.
No, they're doing it right, because remember we just read about how we need to eat more bacon, and so they're like, we got you. We're going to put the bacon right into the coffee flavor.
Sort of like the fancy Bloody Marys that you see that have a couple strips of bacon and a hot wing.
Cheeseburger slider.
We've seen, I ordered one of those once, and it had more like a meal for 3 on the top of it. I'm not a big Bloody Mary girl, but.
No. I like, if you've never tried it before, I'm telling you, this weekend, it's going to be a nice weekend to be outside. Maybe you go out and do some yard work, get things ready for spring, and start getting in the soil. It might still be a little wet. I think there'll be a little rain, isn't there, coming up later on? Yeah,
I don't know, but it's supposed
chance
to be
of showers
tomorrow.
Yeah. But it's time to get out, take care of some of those leaves that you didn't get all in the fall, and then at the end of the day, pour yourself a nice little pour of your favorite scotch or bourbon or whatever you like, and take a strip of bacon and use it as a swizzle stick. I'm telling you, it's good. It really works well.
Turkey bacon?
No, my wife lets me have the real stuff for that.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. And One of the things that happens as the days become longer, the skies brighten, the weather warms up, spring is blooming, and that's the time when the Best of Columbia contest happens every year. So time is nigh. It's upon us. And joining us is Jordan Durham, who is co-editor of the great magazine Inside Columbia. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Randy.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am so good because in our lobby and on the table outside where guests, are staging, there's always Inside Columbia magazines there. And I told it to you the other night at the Zimmies, and I meant it. I told my wife this before we even started on the air here and we were contemplating move. That magazine is so well produced, just the production qualities. I don't care if you had no interest in any of the content, if you just appreciate excellence, as I do. It's wonderfully produced. It's a
beautiful.
It's a beautiful magazine. The photographs, the writing, the glossiness, everything is beautiful about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree, but I'm a little biased.
Yeah, but a lot of work goes into that. It takes a team approach, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. And we have a fairly small team.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're able to produce it at all is amazing in the time we do.
And I know when I go back there into the pod where all of this wonderful work goes on, it gets a little warm because the machine's working so hard. The gears are turning so warm, and you dare not interrupt them. You dare not interrupt them because they're hard at work. But when you do, you get a courteous reply. Now, in the coming up issue, just a little shameless self-promotion here, listeners may want to subscribe, right? Because I heard there was a contest there between a couple of on-air personalities.
There were. I don't know who won.
I do. That's why listeners should probably look into the next issue.
Oh, really?
Huh? When does that issue come out?
March 1st.
I can't wait. Can I have about 10 copies for Mom and
we'll see.
brother? Okay, good.
I'm in the current issue.
Yes,
Hello.
you are.
I forgot we were shooting that day, and I am not dressed up at all.
You ought to explain what that is. So every issue you do a dueling DJs.
Dueling DJs.
It's fun.
Yeah. So we come up with games for a couple DJs here in the office and see them duke it out. And we may or may not have winners in the studio.
I had palpitations, though, beforehand because I saw what Andy and Hannah had to do last time. That was a bigger challenge. That was where you had like a sensory experiment, right?
Yeah, we had to stick our hands in a box and guess what was in there.
She was not pleased.
My trust issues were, fired up that day.
That's better than having to dance to different music with Cosmo and Brimmer. Yes.
Yeah.
Me, Shags, Cosmo, Brimmer had like a dance off. It was
They did Stephanie dirty.
Yeah.
We love coming up with those games.
So creativity rules when it comes to Best of Columbia, and it's always fun to see what's going to be in each issue. What is just a little preview? What's the feature, sort of the headline, the cover issue, cover story this year?
Sure. Time? So our features are kind of spring fashion.
Oh.
So you'll see what people are wearing on and off the court when they are, perhaps playing tennis or pickleball or things like that.
So sports fashion.
Sports fashion.
Okay.
We have our Cutest Pets Contest winners.
Oh, cool.
So if you're excited about that, as I am. And then we also have global eats around Columbia. So,
ooh, neat.
Yeah. So
I love all of the options around here.
There are so many. Yeah. And we could only get, we can't have the magazine be 300 pages, so we had to narrow it down. But it's awesome. I'm excited for the new
love
issue.
the culinary stuff in there. My wife taught a little bit and, does a lot of nutritional teaching and culinary, like how to fix this to make it taste good kind of stuff. So it's always great. Tell us a little bit about Jordan. Tell us about your background, because you're relatively new to the magazine and the area.
I am. Well, my background is in editing. So I actually got my undergrad here at Mizzou, and then in English poetry, and then my master's is in poetry as well. So I've been writing and editing for a very long time.
Yeah. So you're a wordsmith.
Well.
Of sorts.
Of sorts, yeah.
We were talking about that earlier. Do kids get as much training in literature and writing and, with all the technology available to them? I mean, because you're young, so you must have had, some of that exposure, but I don't see that a lot of the humanities are being emphasized like they used to be. A lot of the emphasis is on vocational and, how can I get a job? And not that you can't get a job. Obviously, you have one doing what you do. But, how do we maintain our kids' interest and curiosity and competence in writing and creativity that way?
Sure. I mean, the humanities are still thriving. Whenever kids are in college, they still have to take English 101, 102. I've taught at a community college here in town for English 101, and it's interesting because social media has them just scrolling constantly, right? So getting them to sit down and think about language and the actual words they're putting on paper, they do really well once they do that. So I do think the humanities are thriving, and as an English major, a lot of times I got, well, what are you going to do with that? But there are ample opportunities.
Good. Well, I want to encourage parents to encourage their kids to become competent in great communication, because it makes a big difference. I don't care if you're a plumber or you're a doctor or a lawyer or Brian Hauswirth. Even he can't read. Have you ever seen Brian scribbling when his notes?
Have you seen his typing?
I did a Facebook post on that. I actually did.
True story here, guys. I swear, I actually got an A in penmanship. I did.
You liar.
No, I did. In 1984, I got an A in penmanship. So there was.
What are those hieroglyphics called?
I don't know. I had a hard time reading it. My mom did too, but I did get an A. So God bless that nun's soul. But I really appreciate, Jordan, your this Best of Columbia on InsideColumbia.net. And I want to bring up one thing, because there's a lot of things, and radio personalities are mentioned in there. Our show happens to be mentioned there as a possibility, which I'm thrilled about. But you also have favorites, and of course radio's in there. But there's two things in here that I don't think people really focus enough on. One is best place to hear live music. Randy's a musician, and there's some couple spots in here. The Pierpont General Store, I didn't realize they have music down there.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, yeah.
And then the best local clothing store. And for a town of Columbia size to have that many really nice clothing stores speaks volumes. I think it's terrific. I do hope people vote. That took you a lot of time, I'm sure, to put all that
Let's
together.
talk about the process.
Gosh,
yeah, let's talk about the process. How do people vote? And currently, it's not for finalists, right? I mean, this is nominations. Tell us about it.
So this is the nomination round, and it's open through March 10th. So you can go to InsideColumbia.net and Best of Columbia Nominations 2024, and just click on that, and it'll take you directly to the nominations. So if you don't see your favorite coffee place or your favorite chiropractor on there, you can actually write in your nomination as well. So it takes 25 write-in nominations to get on the ballot. So the stores, businesses, people that you already see on there, it's taken 25 nominations. So you can vote once a day.
And then,
for each category.
Yeah.
Well, and then once that process is over, the nominations are locked in, and then voting opens?
Voting opens March 25th. So we take time to actually, it's kind of a manual process. So we have to, all the, if there are misspellings of businesses and things like that, we have to go through and kind of fix all of that. But then, March 10th, voting opens and goes through April 29th.
Do you have observers from each party? And as you do the manual counting to make sure there was no Russian interference?
Oh, come on.
Oh, boy. Oh, no.
I don't think we have to worry about that.
I'm kidding.
I do. Well, and I do, but I like how you all do have like the past winners as well. And I think especially for people like we like to support small and local businesses here.
Sure.
And then we also, I think if you're new to town or, you're looking for some sort of service, a lot of people turn to social media. But really, I can go on your website and see the winners from last year and say, these are all the people that got voted for best this and best that if I'm looking for that service. So I really find it helpful. And then also as a small business owner myself, as long as you put out a good product, you're eligible to, win these things and get some really good promotion out of it. So it's a really great process.
100%. I mean, this is the community. This is the community speaking, which is super, super exciting for small businesses, local businesses. We get to highlight those people and businesses making our community, which is just awesome.
And what's great for people that are new to the community, I mean, we moved here a couple of years ago, and we didn't really, your kids went to school here, and so you went to a couple places that the kids went to. But my gosh, the more and that was the quickest most efficient way to learn, like, okay, I mean, this is the short list. I better start here. Not that there's not dozens of great places, but I mean, it really helps focus people that are new to the community.
And they also mentioned, Randy and Stephanie, absolutely right, best festivals and annual events. I've been around forever. I've never heard, and there's a lot of great lists. There's one here I've never heard of. Maybe our listeners have, because it's at the top. It says, That's What She Said Columbia. What is that?
What is that? Mm-hmm. That's What She Said.
That's What She Said Columbia.
I think that's a women's event, right?
Yes.
Or is it a comedy event?
That's a women's event, so it's annual.
Okay.
And so they have women speakers from around town, and it's a really big, powerful event.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so the voting is on now for nominations.
Nominations are
for
open.
Nominations are open.
Yes.
So you can just write in, or there's some. How do you decide the ones that are sort of pre-loaded there?
So it takes 25 nominations to get on the ballot. So the ones that you already see, it's taken 25.
And that'll
votes.
change then as time goes on until the nominations are closed?
So yes, we don't limit who gets on the ballot right now.
Right.
So if there are 7 people who've gotten 25 nominations, you'll see them there. So then, voting, we tally everything up, and then 5 people move on to voting. So.
Now, Brian Hauswirth had to leave the studio because he has to get ready for the bottom of the hour news, but I don't know if you've heard about this. Shh. You mentioned that he mentioned there's the best clothing store.
Yeah. Yep.
And the next issue is going to be about sportswear on and off the court, right?
Yes.
I mean, clothing wear. Have you ever heard of Brian Hauswirth's image in a Speedo?
No.
Have you heard about that? It's a running joke. It's a running joke we have here.
Is it?
I would like to nominate Brian for his favorite Speedo sportswear clothes store.
InsideColumbia.net.
There you go.
By the way, are there new categories this year? I know sometimes categories drop and then some are added.
Yeah, so categories change every year. So this year, oh my gosh, now you're really testing me, Randy.
That's okay. We'll have you back.
Okay.
We'll cover those.
Is there a competition for Speedo centerfold? Is what Randy wants to know.
Oh boy.
And
but also
we have talked about the men of 93.9 The Eagle, and sort of like a calendar for next year. Just saying. But she's getting sick right in front of us. Is there a doctor in the house? She's getting nauseated.
Boy.
I will say though, beyond just promoting the businesses, there are some really great things about nonprofits and also community volunteers. I know our Ashley Immel often joins us, and I think she was nominated and won last year for True North. So that part I really enjoy as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many categories that people don't even think about in daily, and so I think that's also the exciting part about Best Of is you can go on there and look at all of the nominations, and you can think about, oh my gosh, this clothing store, I haven't heard of it. Let me look it up. And this is the way you find new and exciting things that you like as well.
Yeah,
and I'll just be the one to do the shameless plug since we're beating around the bush.
Oh, here we go.
You can get on there and vote for Wake Up Mid-Missouri for Best Local Morning Show. So we would really appreciate you nominating us. We're already on the ballot, so you just got to click the little green box next to our name. We'd appreciate it.
Very, very truly, though. I have said it once, and I'll say it a million times. You'll get tired of hearing me say it, ladies and gentlemen. Gratitude is in short supply in our nation. Everyone can get on Facebook and gripe about you had a bad experience.
everybody's in the red. S&P down 0.25, NASDAQ 0.6. Dow the futures are down almost 0.2. Yesterday, it was consumer staples that led the gainers and consumer discretionary and technology amongst the biggest losers. And I woke up this morning and chose violence, and I am in the mood to fight. Randy.
I am here for it.
You've been kind of feisty all morning, and people have been texting in, and they're worried about your blood pressure. So I figured let's test that out here, because the Wall Street Journal, one of the top articles this morning is the case against the annual physical.
Yeah.
And they're saying, and so I think this is the power of marketing, honestly. They're saying, hey, look, like last year, what did they say? 78% of adults report seeing a doctor for their annual physical. But actually, they said it really, there's no data to suggest that an annual physical results in like better outcomes for anybody. And so,
that's because no one does the annual physical properly under the medical industrial complex. Thank you very much.
He jumped in so fast.
But I what is your Roman Empire? One of my Roman empires is like years ago, one of my friends sent me an article and said, did you know there's no evidence that suggests you need to go to the dentist twice a year? And I was like, huh? No, you always go to the dentist twice a year. And so like all of the lies that people tell us because they're self-interested, right? It's in dentist's interest to tell us you must come in every 6 months for, a checkup. And I think here the doctors tell you must come in every year for a checkup. But like if it's not making me healthier, then all it's doing is making you more money. And so anyway, so that's a problem for me. And I think it's the power of marketing. It feels very much so like, remember when you grew up and you, like for me, I slept on a 35-year-old mattress and I turned out just fine. And then suddenly like 10 years ago, they're like, did you know you need to replace your mattress every 8 years? I'm like, I don't think I've ever slept on a mattress that was only 8 years old.
Or like I've seen some people say that you should be replacing your underwear every like 6 months.
Oh, right.
Well, you should replace
How about
it daily.
if you just wash them every 6 months?
Oh, John.
But we have to get your take. I mean, I think we know your take, Randy. But
my
I
take
think
is the same as it is on capital punishment, right? It would be a deterrent. The data says it's not a deterrent. That's because we don't do it right.
Okay.
Swift, certain, severe. When an annual physical takes If you, I talked to a couple of people at the Cole County Lincoln Days on Monday evening who may be showing up at the February 27th preview of our Switzerland trip on February 27th, just a few days from now. That's Tuesday. We'll be having an informational session about that trip to Switzerland. Scotty Cox will be there. I'll be going along. My wife will be with us. Colette Travel, who has vast experience, family companies for years and years and years, has led these kind of trips, and it'll be great. You can visit the Eagle or the KWS website for more info there. Not only Switzerland, but into Austria, a little bit of a trip into Bavaria, and I hope there's lots of fondue. Love fondue. There'll be a lot of chocolate.
You better watch out. I sent you a video of what can go wrong with fondue.
Oh, that was hilarious. The video with the guy he was trying to use a chocolate fountain with cheese fondue, and it starts spinning, and the cheese is going everywhere.
He was trying to melt the cheese in the fountain, and it didn't go well.
So we'll be there to answer questions, and Colette will be there to tighten up any gaps in your knowledge. But there's a lot online if you just link to that through the Eagle or the KWS website, 939theeagle.com, KWS.com. And the Children's Miracle Network Radiothon comes up here tomorrow and Friday, so that'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait to meet the kids and talk to the families, and it's just always so heartwarming. Those stories they literally bring you to tears. I'm just ready. I mean, the Kleenex will be nearby. And so, start thinking about how you want to help the kids and the programs that help the kids at Children's Hospital. We do want to talk about a new entry into Missouri's 3rd Congressional District race, which, of course, is now Bob Onder, right?
Bob Onder. Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman, and
Taylor Burks, who announced here last on Monday. And now we have a new entry?
It appears that Justin Hicks has formed a campaign committee to run for Congress. I am not familiar with him, although his bio is up. He was elected first to the House in 2022. He is currently resides in Lake St. Louis. Is an Army veteran and apparently an attorney, previously worked as an assistant attorney general. And he is expected to jump in. So that is big news in CD3. And of course, yesterday, the big news out of the Capitol was they did an overnight the night before on a Democrat filibuster of IP reform. There appears to be someone offered an amendment to remove, quote unquote, some of the ballot candy off of the amendment. And now it will still end up in conference, and I think Senator Coleman suggested that perhaps some of the provisions that were taken out might get put back on in the House, but at least it has survived the Senate, which is and ended the filibuster. And so whether or not, I don't know whether they're going to go now back to the FRA or where they're going from here, but things are... That is movement.
Yeah, there's
certainly
some progress.
18 to 12,
Yay,
I believe.
they did their jobs and did something. Yay.
They did. And Mary Elizabeth Coleman's feed on her Twitter feed, she's opened her Twitter feed now up to where everybody can respond, and the progressives are just hammering her on there. And again, you'd think if you didn't know any better, progressives have 3/4 majority. And if you look at Twitter, I want to make a point about what Stephanie said, because I don't think a lot of listeners realize Justin Hicks is a huge name, Randy. This is a huge name. For Justin Hicks to get in this race, I'm going to tell you right now, he is a big name. He is going to be formidable. He grew up in North St. Louis County, where I did. Rittner High School. You know where that is.
Sure.
Heavily Democrat. He's African-American. He reminds me a lot of Tim Scott. This guy is a rising star in the Republican Party, and a big name. He also is the vice chairman of General Laws, and he is the vice chair of the Special Committee on Education Reform. He is a big name, and it surprises me. I didn't know that he was going to jump in, but he can raise money. I think the only thing I can think of that may hurt him is lack of name recognition, maybe in mid-Missouri, but he's a big name. And
does he live in the district?
Well, Lake St. again, it's right there on the edge, and again, you don't have to live in the district. The map has changed. If he's not, he's close. And I know that we've had some listeners say that. In fact, Taylor Burks has said that too. You don't have to live in the district. St. Charles County is in the district. Wentzville and Warrenton, I don't know what part of Lake St. Louis.
It divides up that area,
It's
that general
really
area.
close. And again, it's because they cut counties in half, and it gets confusing. Regardless, you don't have to live in the county. I mean, he is. I
mean, thus far, Taylor Burks is the only one that lives in the district.
And I think he's
running for the Republican nomination.
And the only one from mid-Missouri. But I'm saying I would not underestimate this Justin Hicks. I mean, this is a guy that was an assistant attorney general, and the one thing we talk about, you guys have talked about abortion, other stuff like that. The Republican Party and Vivek Malik last year said this at the Lincoln Days. He said that immigrants that he knows vote Republican, that they're conservative, they go to church. He said that at there. And he feels like Republicans have not done a very good job of reaching out to them. And there haven't been all that many African-American Republican lawmakers in the General Assembly. There was a guy named Shamed Dogan. Stephanie knows Shamed. He termed out. There was another guy by the name of Sherman Parker. I don't know if you guys remember Sherman or not, but Sherman was back about 20 years ago, and he passed away.
Yep, you're right.
Carson Ross was from Blue Springs.
Well, and in Cole County, we saw Paul Berry is running for. Is he running for LG?
LG, right?
Yes.
So there, whether this guy will be an also ran or not, I don't know. But I think the more the merrier. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. The more that we have to help, like the refiner's fire of the Bible. The refiner's fire. It helps hone the message. It helps hopefully create a consensus candidate that everyone can get behind strongly.
But if we really look at it, who's it helping and who's it hurting? I mean, I think it's a big bump for Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman being the only woman in the race. I think, it's a big, it's tough for Bob Onder because, again, it's cutting into the, St. Louis folks. So I think,
St. Louis.
Yeah. And I mean, the more people that get in, what we know is, Missouri has what's known as the jungle primary. And so the more people that get in, the smaller percentage of votes that you need to win. And so you might be able to win with 30 or less. So, I think
that's another way to look at it.
And, filing opens, in less than a week now. So I suspect, the more people that jump in, I think the more people are going to want to jump in because they realize, well, maybe I only have a base of 20%, but maybe that's all I need. And so it's shaping up to be an interesting race.
It's been interesting, too. Brian, we think about some of the folks who have told us that they aren't jumping in, like Senator Fitzwater and Senator Routon and all those guys, that, there was a lot of speculation early on that they get in the race, and they said for, whatever reason, a lot of it personal, that they weren't going to go that route.
Sarah Walsh was brought up early.
Yeah, and of course, Routon, you're exactly right, John Routon, of course, running for Secretary of State. But I do think that that is what primaries are about. They're a chance to give everyone an opportunity. And if many, I think that shows a lot of interest. The seat is heavily Republican. There's no way a Democrat's going to win the new third congressional district. I mean, it's a deep red district, as most of the congressional districts are. I mean, they theoretically, I guess they could have a shot at Ann Wagner to beat her in the second, but I don't see that happening either. But that might be a chance for pickup. I don't see a Democrat, at least at this point, winning the third. But my point is that. Don't underestimate Justin Hicks. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's good. We'll have to keep an eye on it.
I think he's a rising star in the Republican Party. And the vice chairman of General Laws Committee is a freshman lawmaker. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
That is absolutely unheard of. And I'm going to say it's unprecedented. I've never heard of it.
Who says the Republican Party in Missouri nationally is not a huge tent?
It is.
It's a big tent.
They have a big tent. Ronald Reagan talked about that. Big tent philosophy, and some conservatives used to get upset with him because he welcomed pro-choice people into the party as well. He talked about that, and Tim Scott in South Carolina.
Right.
But just in terms of elected officials in Jefferson City, African-American lawmakers, Shamed Dogan's the last one that they've had.
Agreed. All right.
18th annual Miracles for Kids Radiothon. Wow. Kristen Fritchian it seemed like 18 years.
Time flies by.
It's neat, and CMN has been, in mid-Missouri for a long, long time. I mean, we were joking the other day in one of our sessions with you and said, heck, I remember when Mary Ann Dawn Wells from
right.
Gilligan's Island was an integral part of it, a
yes.
Stevens graduate, and she was right in the midst of it.
Yes, back in the day when we did the telethon.
So talk to us. For the few uninitiated folks out there who aren't aware of MU Health and Children's Hospital and CMN, give them the overview.
Okay. Well, MU Healthcare's Children's Hospital is one of 170 Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And what that means is basically every penny that is raised through Children's Miracle Network stays local to our children's hospital.
That's something important to point out. Say that again, because there are a lot of people out there who will say, oh boy, here we go with another radiothon, a telethon or something, and it just goes out of mid-Missouri.
It does not. It all stays local. Not only does it stay local to Missouri, it stays local to our children's hospital in Columbia, Missouri.
Hannah joked about some of the peripheral things that the average person wouldn't know about that the CMN Children's Miracle Network funding goes for. Things as instrumental as music therapy and therapy dogs.
That's right. And we also do programmatic needs, research, life-saving equipment, and education. Talk
to us about how important this is to the families, because those of us who've had the pleasure of doing the radiothon for a number of years get it. But boy, when you hear from these families and talk to the kids, and the vast majority of the kids are great success stories, it brings it close to home, doesn't it?
It really does. It tells you about the fabulous care that they received while they were patients at the hospital. And it's a way for the families to give back to the hospital just by sharing their story.
Well, and so many of these individuals we've seen success stories, we've seen tragedies, and we've seen families, move on. That's part of life. But we've also seen them where we see some of our CMN kids are now headed off to college this year.
Absolutely. I've been doing this 11 years now, and so a lot of them, when I first met them, they were 10, 11 years old, and now they're 18 and they're going off to college.
In that 11 years, how has the technology changed for the professionals at Children's Hospital?
Oh, gosh. Every year they're coming out with more technically savvy equipment and life-saving equipment for both adult and children. So it's just, it's a good place to be if you need patient care.
And patients come here from all over outstate Missouri, don't they?
Yes. Actually, every county in the state of Missouri comes to our hospital, and we even have about 500 patients that come from outside of Missouri.
Well, let's give everybody the particulars. We go to our websites at KWOS.com or 939theeagle.com. It's pretty darn easy to donate. Let's give them all the particulars.
Okay. You can definitely donate online. We've got Venmo, and then we've got Miracle. You can text to donate. So you can text the word Miracle to 51555, and it'll bring up the information for you to be able to donate.
Big O Tires phone bank is still alive and well, and we love to hear those phones ring.
Absolutely.
So, Kristen, we are all set to go tomorrow and Friday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And maybe a reminder to folks to dig down deep, because with Children's Hospital, MU Health, you never know when you and your family may need it.
That is absolutely correct.
We'll see everybody there. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Can't wait for it, because tomorrow morning, starting at 6 a.m., you will have a chance to absolutely make a huge difference in a child's life, many children's lives, and their families. And I've been a part of those kinds of systems that take care of kids. I remember my training in St. Louis when I was there. at Children's Hospital down there. And the same kind of things go on here. And it literally, I think every year, Hannah, it brings us to tears. I mean, you hear the stories, you feel the gratitude of the families and the kids. And we'll be talking with many of those families tomorrow.
Yeah, lots of kids, that members in the building have watched grow up over the years.
Brian has a special girlfriend. I know he can't wait to see her tomorrow. Watched her grow up too. So we'll be talking about that. And Brian gets really worked up over, we all have those kids that we've just become engaged with. And so that always is exciting. Next, by the way, there's a deadline tomorrow. Is that right? Tomorrow. Hannah? If you want to come to Boone County Lincoln Days, which is next Thursday, the 29th, you want to make sure and, log on to the
Eagles Facebook page. It is the post that's pinned to the top of the page.
So it's right there.
Yep. So it's super easy to find. Tomorrow is the deadline for like a guaranteed spot at Boone County Lincoln Days. They might have a few tickets left after that, but there's no guarantee.
It's going to be loaded. If it's anything like Cole County Lincoln Days
there were so many candidates, and with CD3, more and more people adding to that race, I think there might even be more candidates in Boone County than there were at Cole.
Yeah. It was really interesting to hear the candidates the other night really hone their message to a 2-minute limit. Most of them did pretty well.
I was impressed, actually.
I liked how Cole County did that. They kind of did the cattle call, and they were just like up, and just rolled people right on through. Hopefully Boone County will do the same.
And I have the privilege of emceeing, so I'm looking forward to